Okay, and we'll stop there. So thank you for respecting that. We're gonna kick off with our first speaker, which is This Food Bangz. This Food Bangz, Mr. Elias is a secondary school PE teacher, but I know him as This Food Bangz. I'm sure many of you in here would know him as This Food Bangz, and that's the idea of building a brand. When you build your brand, that's what people that's the first thing that comes to mind when people think of you. I think of him as the guy that goes around and it shows us different cultures, different foods, different food experiences, and brings it to the forefront of our screens. So without further ado, Eli, thank you for joining us, and I'm going to stop sharing and allow you to go to main speaker view.
Yes. Hello. Good morning. Good morning, people. Happy Saturday. Yeah. So my name's Eli. Yeah, I'm the founder of This Food Bangz. It's mad that I'm even saying that. Yeah. So I basically showcase food and the people behind the plate, and I just use food as a vehicle to stop off at culture, history, and society. And yeah, do you know what is branding? It's an interesting one because what I've been doing is I've been doing a lot of research about branding, and I'll be honest with you. When I first started, I didn't know anything about branding. I just thought I'm just doing it for fun. And just touching on from what you're saying about Jamal Edwards and how much of a pioneering figure he is. I don't even think that he was thinking about branding. I just think that he was doing it just for the sheer enjoyment of just showcasing music and getting it out to people out there. I think that's all I was trying to do. I think when it comes to branding, I think that the main thing is um, I don't think there's a formula for it. I think the only formula that I can say is that you just have to be consistent and you have to be authentic to your audience. And you just have to know yourself, um, and just put yourself at the forefront, because at the end of the day, I'm a content creator. So if I'm creating this content, I'm at the forefront. So my I am the brand, more or less. So with me being the brand, I've got to remain authentic at all times. And I think there's a book that before I started This Food Banks, there was a book that I was reading called Contagious, and it's written by Jonah Berger, and it's about the let's say the power of word of mouth in the digital age. And even now that we are in such a, let's say, tech age, we're in a different age now where everything is being run by social media and everything else. Jonah Berger goes on to say that there is still some level of importance in the word of mouth, and that is very, very important. So I think we also in an age, because we're so caught up with numbers, followers, and everything else, you could easily lose yourself in that. So it's very important to look after look after the followers that I've been following you from day one. And once they see the growth, they will then go on and spread that let's say This Food Bangs to the next person. So if you start off with one follower, they would then say, look, have you heard about so and so, Black Men Teach, it's apparently they've got this person coming on or that person coming on. And then the word of mouth is what's important. Don't get me wrong, social media has its benefits. Obviously it allows people to see you, and it allows you to share your videos and whatnot. But I think the main importance of branding is it's also about looking after the followers you have, because sometimes people lose themselves in trying to chase more followers, and you could easily just lose track of everything. So it's important that you look after the people that are there now. So if you've got, I don't know, 500, 400 followers, they will then spread the word. That's what it is about. And the thing about it is that someone was like to me the other day, yo, this how'd you go, how'd you go viral? How'd you go viral? Social media and everything else about viral. There's no formula for it. I'm being serious. There's no formula for um a viral moment when it comes to social media. What there is consistency and authenticity is what creates a viral moment. That's what branding is really. It's just you being consistent. So a lot of you that know action hero teacher as well. Me and him were good friends, and we used to have a lot of chats about this. And we always used to tell each other, keep going. You're I don't know. He used to be like, you're one video away. You're one video away. You're one video away. And as you go, you acquire followers, and then you become the brand almost. And I remember Action Hero teacher, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, he always used to put the book at the forefront. And I said, you wrote the book, you need to stand with that book as well, you know what I'm saying? Because because you are the one that wrote the book, and people would like to get to know the person that wrote the book. You're a black teacher, you've written a banging book. um Sometimes people just want to get to know that individual rather than the book. There are millions of books out there, but people don't even know about that person. So branding essentially is about your about you, and about how authentic you are, and about how honest you are with yourself, and about just staying true to who you are. I've made decisions, like, for example, you've got to make tough decisions when you are creating a brand, and when you're in the process. I mean, sadly, I lost someone that featured on my show, like a good friend that featured on my show. And I was due to release a Ghana vlog in that week. And because of an untimely demise, I didn't know how to approach it. I was like, if I release the Ghana vlog, it doesn't really reflect how I feel right now, because I was so torn up by the fact that she was no longer here with us. So I made that conscious decision of just scrapping the vlog, and doing a tribute video for Yasmin. And sometimes you've got to, and I thought this might go left. People might not understand why I'm doing this. But in being honest with myself and with my emotions, I think people were more in tune with that, because with everything we're doing, there's a human side to what we're doing. There is an emotional connection. And when the reason why I started this Food Bangs, and I did say in the video, is it's not just about the food, but it's about the extraordinary people you meet along the way. And yes, I'm at the forefront, but also I am pushing them to the front and getting them to speak about their cuisines and everything else. And I felt at the time Yasmin did this so well, and she showcased her cuisine. Her personality shone through, and that is what my brand is about, really, is giving people that spotlight, that limelight that they would never get. And I made that conscious decision to put her at the forefront. Now, I thought it's not gonna bang. I just thought people wouldn't get it. But the amount of messages that I got just for being so honest about my feelings and so open out there, that people respect that more. And being honest with yourself. You could easily get lost with the followers and, oh, I've got a schedule. But life happens and life surprises us. So all I can say about branding is just being honest with yourself. There's no such thing as a formula for a viral moment, or a formula for a brand to blow. The formula is consistency and honesty, and just being honest with yourself. And that's all I can say when it comes to branding. Any questions?
Perfect. Eli, thank you. I'm gonna kick us off with the first question, and then I'll give people a chance to comment questions.
Yeah.
But my question is, so I know that the brand you've built is essentially sort of away from your role as a teacher. How has the two sort of aligned or impact or influenced each other, if at all?
Oh, it's aligned. You know, my students, I'll give you an example. My students, like what this food Bangz has taught me is just be honest with yourself. And what I've noticed is that my students appreciate honesty. They appreciate it. I'm telling you, they appreciate I always so I have form every day. I have form with my year 11 class, and they're old enough to understand it. And just following on from the whole Yasmin situation, where I lost her in this untimely demise, I went into work and I told them, I said, guys, I can't lie to you. I'm so heartbroken by this, and I'm torn because my students watch it. They watch it, and they were like, "Sir, we're sorry for your loss." And as I'm explaining to them the story, I started to break down in front of them, and in that moment, I told them about grief and how sometimes as teachers, and I was very honest. I said, I can't be an entertainer. And teachers, we're the best entertainers in the world. I can't lie. We could have so much going on in our everyday lives. We could have had a little argument with our missus, and then we're going to have to teach. You know what I'm saying? Or we haven't eaten, but we're working on an empty stomach, having to smile and having to teach an amazing lesson. And that day, I just couldn't do it. And I just told them everything. And they really appreciated that. And about 2 students came up to me and they said, "Sir, you know what? It's actually mad that you said that. You know, I lost an uncle last week. You know, and it's crazy." So those two have intertwined, and I've really sort of began to understood that the power of being honest with yourself and with the people around you. Sometimes, because this is life. We are all going through it, and this food Bangz, as much as it is about food, the topics that I've touched on, and my students have watched some of my episodes, where it can go from my tribe to the loss of an individual, and my next episode that's coming out is about the property development in Ghana, and how it's affecting social housing. So it's a growing problem. It's a double-edged sword. It's contributing to the economy, but it's people are struggling to get onto the property ladder in Ghana, because their income doesn't equate to the housing and how much it costs. So that's what it is. It's taught me about honesty. So it coincides, it coincides. It's life, and school is life, and you're teaching them about life. It's life lessons, and they value that. They value that a lot. The students value that a lot.
And I think the comments in the chat, just the link to you putting your vulnerability out there, because that's not an easy thing to do. Once you build a brand, it's easy to just hide behind that brand in a sense, and not be that authentic self and show your true self. So the fact that you share that with your students as well is amazing, and it's great for them to experience a Black man who is able to be vulnerable and show that he is impacted by things that that happen. Nick, we'll come to you if you got a question. You see your hand raised, and then we'll look to move on.
Okay, no, thanks. Eli, I've known you that for a long time, personally, so it's it's a real honor listening to the story. But my question to you, Eli, is so you spoke about being consistent and being authentic in your branding. I know, obviously, I've seen the work that you do behind the scenes in regards to consistency, but for people obviously starting off, etc., what would you say in terms of advice about being consistent? Because there can be times where it is hard, like you're burnt out you're doing this alongside working as a school teacher. So talk us through in terms of like remaining consistent and like seeking that inner motivation to obviously continue striving to deliver what you're delivering.
Do you know what? That's a fantastic question, Nick. We all, I mean, we all go through it as creators. We get creative fatigue. I was having sorry to bring you up, Karl, but me and Karl, we speak, Action Hero teacher, and he was saying that he was burnt out, you know, and sometimes we need to rest. And I think the only thing is that I keep telling myself is, and Kevin, you know, Kevin, Action Hero teacher, they will always tell me, you're one video away. You're one video away from someone doing this or someone contacting you. And it's so true, because every video that I put out there, something has happened. Something amazing has happened. So you know, you could get caught up with the whole followers and why am I not blowing yet? I remember I was like five episodes in, yeah, I did like 5 videos, and I was just like, how comes I ain't blown, fam? You know what I mean? Like, why, you know, this is good content, but people have got to get to know you, you know, people have got to get to understand the brand and understand you as a person. So in terms of being motivated, sometimes, you know what, you've got to rest. You know, I was meant to release a video last week, but just think of it as I'm coming off the back of, you know, the emotional drainage from losing a friend to trying to carry on with the videos again and again. And I just said to myself, you know what, it's half term. Let me just chill for a bit. You know, sometimes you got to be honest with yourself, and you just got to keep going. Once you start, you can't stop. You just can't stop. You just got to keep on going. And you know, I went to a Content Creators Awards the other I think 2-3 months ago, and I remember I went up to someone, and you know, one creator that I follow, and I said, look, can you give me any advice? And he's like, you don't need it. You started. He goes, you started. Because what's happened is there are people that have the cameras, there are people that have the equipment, but they keep telling themselves, you know what, next week, next month, you know what, tomorrow I'll do it. So they got everything, but it's like, just start. And once you start, enjoy the process. And your first 10 videos are going to be dead, or your first 10 pages that you're trying to write in your book, dead. But it's you learn from those mistakes. And once you learn from those mistakes, you start to fine tune your craft. And that's how it works, Nick, man. So you know, and I love watching my content. So when I see, do you know how I motivate myself from episode 1 to episode 45 or whatnot? I watch it and I'm like, damn, that's growth. That's enough motivation for me. That's it, really.
Thank you, Eli. And I think one thing that I got from what you said there is, I mean, especially towards the end, it doesn't have to be perfect before you get started. You know, you keep going and you keep progressing, and you keep building on what you have. It's okay to take rest. It's okay to take a step back, depending on how you're feeling. So thank you for sharing, Eli. I see the questions in the chat. I've banked them, and we're gonna come back to them towards the end. Eli, thank you. It's a pleasure to hear,
very much.
You know, your journey, your story. So thank you for sharing with us, and thank you for dropping your tips and your advice and answering those questions. We're going to move on to our second speaker. Our second speaker, Mr. David Darkwah, is going to be sharing with us. Mr. David Darkwah has been working with youth for over 26 years. So he's not specifically in a school teacher, right? He works with youth. He's been a youth pastor, a youth director, and had many various roles, right? So I'm going to hand over to David Darkwah, and for me and for Black Men Teach, the significance of having the likes of David with us and Anthony is making a link between education and society, you know, and us as Black men in education, but Black men in society as well, right? So David, without further ado, I want to let you go for it.
Brilliant. I just want to thank you for having us. Really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah, getting straight into it. I've worked with young people for approximately about 25, 26 years. That'll be vocational, going into schools, helping the BME, Black minority ethnic children, just to do better educationally, how we could do that. To get in regards to the point of branding, I'll say my branding's more about studying history, studying society, studying culture, and seeing what would serve the best for many of the underprivileged kids or young people you're dealing with, whether it be Hackney, whether it be the streets of South London, some of the sort of like, as we might know, some of the challenges there. And I say the branding specifically, what I specialize in is connecting young people with positive role models. The state of situation or the state of place that is not, the community's kind of suffered with sort of like Black mental men. So when I find them, it's about connecting them, and it's about also making a case for why these young people should be inspired, like from individuals like Eli. So just going into it, when you look into, just looking into like the past, especially American history, Black people have really done the best when they've been under the most affliction or oppression. As many of us know, during 1940 to about 1970, that within those 30 years, we've accomplished more than the last 30 years. And one of the reasons for that was because of the Rosenwald and the Washington T. Booker schools. So during that time, they built about 5,000 schools. After building 5,000 schools, the education gap, which was approximately about 3 years, they brought it down to literally, it was 6 months. Just through education, just through Black educators, just through men and women saying that, do you know what, though we've got the Jim Crow laws, though we've got all this opposition, though we've got all of this institutional racism, as Frederick Douglass said, knowledge makes a man unfit to be a slave. So they just poured into education, and all these young people exceeded to such a level that there was a predicament that happened within the education system, and that was when it came to integrating into the school system both whites and Blacks. There was obviously a debate, and there was a lot of pushback saying that, you know what, we don't want to end segregation from the white people, we want to integrate it all. And one of the funny things was the pushbacks wasn't just from the white racists, but it was also pushback from another sector of people. And those sector of people was actually other Black people within the civil rights movement. And so the opposition from a set of Black people within the civil rights movement, that it was not necessarily a good idea to integrate, was some of or many of the Black schools was at such a high level of excellence, they made the argument that if we integrate, we're going to bring it down to a subpar. Now, I'm not making the case of integration, not integrate. I'm making the point that with all what Eli was speaking about, it is very evident that he operates in a place of excellence. And so when he's speaking about, you don't have to kind of like, it's not about the followers, it's not about that. Because Eli operates at a place of excellence, he's the type of individual, I'll tell a lot of these young guys in regards to, you know, whether they'll be in gangs, whether they'll be in crime, and say, do you know, this individual, this guy Eli who's talking, people will not only follow, but he will be a success. Not because he's waiting for the system to make him a success, not because that he's got necessarily a good network, but because there's a instinct and an intuitive and an innate ability of excellence. He would trigger something called the Martha Collins principle. And the Martha Collins principle is this: there was a teacher, she was a Black teacher during the Jim Crow times. She was fed up with kids failing, they're not doing well at school, and she was kind of discouraged about it. So she just quit. She never quit teaching, but she went down to downtown Chicago. She sets up her own school, and she starts to preach and teach and indoctrinate excellence. as she starts to teach excellence to all these Black kids, and she wouldn't take subpar as an excuse, what happens is all of these working class and poor African American children, they start to educationally excel. But then what happened was there was this dynamic that the white people actually started to bring their children to this Black woman's school. Jim Crow's there, segregation's there, there's all types of systemic racism there, but because of excellence, it was more of a powerful magnet in order to pull even those where there was hostility, and she was having all these white students coming to a school and learning. And so my branding is, if I can get some of these young boys, these young guys who are what's it called, excluded or different, disenfranchised, and connect them with individuals like Black Teach, individuals like Eli, then you've almost got a force multiplier that the work starts happening with itself, because people buy people. And so just listening to Eli, I mean, there was a Roman philosopher, and he says that his name was Virgil, is a friend of one of the Caesars. And he said, people are like musical instruments, and it just depends on who touches them in the sound they make. And there's a lot of young people where it's like they're playing the wrong sound, they're playing the wrong chord. But if you could connect them to someone inspirational, to hear Eli's story, that's where that false multiplier factor comes into it. And they think, do you know what? Instead of just the negativity, I see the positivity, and I think I could pull this off like he's pulled it off. I'll just end it with this. There was a guy called Eli McCoy. So Elijah McCoy. So Elijah McCoy is a slave, and he, you know, just after slavery breaks out. And so he goes to work on a railroad. As he goes to work on the railroad, because he's Black, he gets the worst job. The worst job was to work on the railway track and to oil the wheels. So the guy's got the worst end of it because of his color, so he's stuck in it. But Elijah McCoy had a different mindset. Because one man said that, do you know what? You can speak about the thief in the alley, but what about the thief in your mind? So this guy's got a different mindset. He said, I'm going to apply myself. I'm going to apply myself and give it my best. So the man was an inventor. This Black man was an inventor. And he invents some type of device which allows the wheels to be automatically oiled. Now, through this invention, Elijah McCoy is making a lot of money as a Black guy during the time of racism. So what happens is a lot of the white contractors, they try to copy his invention. And they're going to Elijah's employer and say, look, we've made the same thing. We've made the same invention. We've made the same invention. But just like Eli, the man Elijah McCoy was of such an excellence, of such a par excellence, that what transpired is that the people, his employers, said, we don't want your invention. We want the real McCoy. And that's where the saying comes from that Black man, from that inventor. And through his diligence and his just applying himself, he actually came up with 57 patents for 57 other inventions. And so my branding literally is, when I find individuals like Black Teach or Eli, or hearing Eli or other sort of entrepreneurs and people who move and shake, it's connecting young people with them and say, look, there is your example in a practical real world experience. Go to them, listen to them, and let the impartation take place. Oh, that's it. I've just timed myself. I've done 9 minutes. I'll cut off for any questions.
Thank you, David. And I think from what you said, that I mean, as in mentoring, we say similar things. It's about showing students alternate life experiences, you know, connecting them with the better things, the better opportunities. We talk about representation matters, and representation of that excellence. Thank you. Is there any questions for David in the chat? So from the audience, are there any questions that people would like to ask? People are like musical instruments, their sound depends on who touches them. Virgil, powerful quote. Yeah, you were missing in my days of school, David. Keep breaking barriers. So that's lots of praise for what you said, David. I do have a question. So for yourself, as a black man in society, and sort of talking about what you experience, we'll go to Gervais first because of time. We'll go to Gervais with your question. Go for it, Gervais.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I just want to thank both of the speakers first and foremost, and the organizers before I start. I just want to ask the question. You mentioned about the real McCoy and that term, inventors. And do you believe that with branding, we need to, do you think knowledge yourself is also important, the link with it, or authenticity? What do you think is the correlation between that and branding? Because and how
sorry, I missed the first part. Sorry, I missed just the first part of that question. Sorry.
Yeah, I was saying that you mentioned about the McCoy and his invention.
Yeah.
And you talked about you connecting people with role models, but I wanted to know the link between knowledge itself and the branding. Does that make it even better if one has knowledge of self?
Yeah. Yeah, very good. I think, who is it? Lord Byron, who said that the best prophet of the future is the past. So to know to know where you're coming from and what you're able to do, and also your history, because you know the negatives for our community and the problems and this issue and that issue, but we've got a lot of heroes. We've got a lot of people back in the day who have done some incredible thing. I mean, as I said, Booker T. Washington. Here is a man who was stuck in a very, very horrendous system. But Booker T. Washington's mindset is this: I'm a slave, but at the age of 9, I'm no longer a slave. I cannot read, but I'm going to teach myself to read. Frederick Douglass, the same thing. What did Frederick Douglass say? Frederick Douglass said that, you know what? It's easier to build strong children than repair broken men. So with knowing that mindset from this hero from the past, what that does for me for the future is I look at Black Teach and I think, do you know what? Black Teach is not just another option to help our community. Literally, it's almost like the American Army's Navy SEALs or Delta Force. It's a tier 1 operation. It's the tip of the spear. I would put down to the hypothesis that something which Black Teach is doing, I would make the argument that it is almost the only hope, because when you look at the incredible progress that the Black people made during the Jim Crow time, it was through Black educators that was able to minimize the gap. And to that point, when the Black educators like Black Teach came onto the scene and said, okay, we've gone through all of this slavery and stuff like this, we're going to move and shake. During that renaissance of Black teachers and Black education, what happened? You had Black people had their own insurance companies. They weren't allowed into the white banks, so they created their own banks. They had their own shipping organizations. They had their own hotels. Millionaires were made during the time of the Jim Crow era. It was such a time of renaissance and excellence and a revival, with a burst and explosion of Black entrepreneurs, which was triggered by Black educators, that from when they burnt down the Black Wall Street, since that time, we haven't had a Black-owned building from Maine to South Carolina like the times when we were under the most oppression. But who were the ones who triggered our way out of that oppression? It was those Black people who said, you know what, we understand where we're at, we understand things are not perfect, but we are going to work in the time of oppression through education and through entrepreneurs like Eli, and we're going to excel through this, not by what people can give us and, you know, the justifications. It's a mindset thing. So yes, knowledge is a big key and a big connection. And we all know with slavery, right? So the slavery is, if you was a white person or a Black person, you were learning to read, that was either capital punishment for the slave, or the white person, it was sort of like imprisonment. The worst thing that people fear is when you're able to pick up a book and actually read and learn, because knowledge is a force multiplier.
Thank you.
Wow. Wow, that's all I have to say is wow, quality stuff, David. Thank you for sharing with us. You know, it's powerful stuff, and then, you know, we're recording the event, so watching it back and actually, you know, hearing again, it's going to be powerful. And thank you for your efforts. Thank you for all your comments. And it's been amazing. It's been great to hear you speak, and so passionately as well. And thank you. We're gonna move on to our third speaker. That is Anthony Dalphin. So Anthony is the CEO of national award-winning educational organization Standing Ovation. He's also a creative entrepreneur. I don't know Anthony personally, but like I said before with Eli, when I think of him, I see his amazing achievements. I see his personal brand. I see his business, and the brand he's created for himself. So, and that's why I thought, you know, it is perfect. And the fact that he agreed and was available to speak at this event, it's a pleasure to have you here, Anthony. So I'll hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And hi, everybody. Thanks for having me this morning to be part of this important, insightful talk. I think it's really good that Black Men Teach is raising awareness around branding, identity, entrepreneurship, and us having ownership as Black people for our own entities, but also supporting one another in our ventures as well, because we know that support sometimes is very rare nowadays, and sometimes tends to have, you know, hidden messages and motives behind it. But when you're doing it from a very pure heart, then it's always received well. Myself, as mentioned, I'm a CEO of a national education organization that I founded 6 years ago now. Time's just absolutely flown. I don't know where it's gone. But the idea behind me setting up an education organization, going back from a youngster, from the age of 13, 14, I've always been interested in business. I started in, you know, doing car washes outside my house, getting a lawnmower and just, you know, knocking on the neighbors' doors and saying, can I mow your lawn, you know, for £10. But the entrepreneurial mind was always instilled in me, probably growing up in a single parent family, with my mother being a full-time nurse. And she was a nurse for over 40 years, retired now. But the caring side in my mother was always instilled in me and my brothers. So I always knew that I had some kind of a purpose to create change, whether that be for young people, for elderly people, whichever age it was. I knew I wanted to make a difference. So, you know, fast forward in my early years of education, I worked as a TA within a primary school, going right through to a mentor, a pastoral manager, so in charge of behaviour across a whole school, in a very inner city gang affiliated area in Birmingham called Handsworth, which was the former Gang's Burger Bar, which you may have heard of from Birmingham, and it's a very renowned gang. So the issues that I was having to address and work with our young boys, especially Black boys within that school, you know, was very back and forth, and trying to change their mindset to let them know that there is actually another way to go. You may have a brother or sister that's followed that course, but actually as a youngster, it's down to you to create your own path for yourself, not for your brothers, not for your siblings, for you. So I would say that for me, when I started my education company, what allowed me to do that was knowing my identity and what my own purpose was. And I think as individuals, it's really important that we know our own identity and who we are before we go forward with anything. Because that way, when things become difficult, your feet are firmly cemented in the ground and your foundations set and solid for whatever you know, trials and tribulations may come your way. And on my journey through entrepreneurship, and many of you know who work in education, it hasn't been a diverse setting for many schools that I've been in, worked in, even on supply, working for agencies, but then ones I've been employed in. It's been a constant battle to try and have a voice and to make make it known to amongst your staff team that you actually have, or you can bring something to the table. So from very early on, I've seen that it's important for us to have a voice and to make sure from early we set the tone for who we are, what we're here to do, and what change that we're going to contribute and make to an establishment or an organization. Now I'm obviously self-employed, and I run it. You know, I have a team of people who work with Standing Ovation across the UK. We have now become what you may say a much more firmly established organisation within education. And many of the schools who email and call us for inquiries are predominantly white schools, and we go in and, you know, very English private schools, grammar schools. Just yesterday, I was on a call with a CEO of 2 grammar schools over in Bexley Heath, which are predominantly white schools. But just to hear from a perspective of a CEO now wanting to tap in to a Black-owned organisation for their support really warms my heart. The fact that we're at a stage now where we can step forward, we can have some ownership for what we have to offer. And I know there's a lot of quiet voices in the room, but the best advice I can give you is each of us, and I'll ask everybody to do this actually who's on the call. I know not everybody's got their cameras on, but even if you're there with me, if everybody can just hold their hands out for a moment, and I want you to kind of just look into your own individual pot of treasure, because we all have a pot of treasure that we have for ourselves. And you may probably not know what I mean when I say pot of treasure. Well, everybody's got their own qualities, their own abilities, their own attributes that they can offer that you personally can bring to the world. Now, unless we remind ourselves of that of a morning, of an afternoon, of an evening, it's unlikely that you're going to use what's in your pot of treasure to make a difference or to be known out there and to have a voice. So I've learned regularly now to look into my pot of treasure daily, self-affirmation and speaking to myself and telling myself, I know my purpose. I know what I'm here to do. And there are days when we wake up and we don't feel as great about the day or the week ahead, but it's very important to try and turn that mindset around and get back on a positive thinking process. On the topic of branding, building Standing Ovation project over a period of 6 years has been tough. It all can seem very swimmingly and easy when you look through social media and you see things happening and, oh, that's happened now. Oh gosh, 2 weeks have passed and this has happened now. But nobody, and I'm sure some of you'll agree here, nobody ever understands from an entrepreneurial perspective the work that goes in behind it, the graft that you have to put in when it comes to working out how to have a strong brand, how to be there amongst the rest of them. And, you know, how are we going to get recognized if there's 10 other people offering or talking about what we have to say? So branding for me from very early on was something where I had to almost create my own lane. And yes, there was people around doing music education provisions. There was people doing drama education provisions and behavior. But for me, it was all about how can we think outside the box? And as creative entrepreneurs, for anyone here who, you know, would say they're a creative entrepreneur, you'll know that a creative always is thinking of ways that they can do things slightly different or a lot different sometimes. So for me, it's all about having a strong brand, but consistency. And I will say for anyone who's got ventures, consistency is key. You know, I sometimes think, gosh, people must be sick of me now on social media because it's an everyday thing where I'm posting something or I'm tweeting something. But then I have to remind myself, well, if I don't speak about it or my team don't speak about this consistently, then who's going to actually take us serious? So again, the consistency of having your material out there, whether that is, you know, stuff around food, whether that's things around fashion, whether that's things around your services as a coach, as a motivational speaker, whatever area it is, being consistent in doing it will eventually start to make noise. And over a period of time, I've noticed and I've realized now 100% that having the consistency starts to make noise amongst others, and others start to talk about it. And it's great when you can get your initiatives at a stage where you no longer have to voice it as much because other people have bought into what you put out there because of the consistency. And that's very much at where we are now at this stage. You know, I'm confident that there's other people who know my values as the founder, but they can also see it reflective through what we put out. The proof is in the pudding. And if you can show people that, definitely you're on a good road. When it comes to challenges, there's always going to be challenges within your practice, whether that is as a teacher, as a motivational speaker, someone who's offering any kind of provision within education, or whether it's something totally different. There's always going to be setbacks. And, you know, with those setbacks, I think it's just key to always try and take a positive from any setback that you have, because there will be setbacks. I can't sugarcoat it. I can't water that down. There will be setbacks. There'll be people who look at you different. I was out the other day, and most people who follow me on Twitter will know I'm normally in a suit. If I'm working, I'm in a suit. I've got a shirt and tie on. I'm smart. But I was out the other day. I'm setting up my second coffee shop. I'm about to open a second coffee shop in Birmingham, and I was in my scruffs. I was in my paint, clothes covered in paint, and I just happened to walk past a school that I'd never come across before, and I thought, let me just actually ring the buzzer and knock on. And I had a cap on, I had a hoodie, and I had some tracksuit bottoms, and I look scruffy, what they'll call a roadman, you might say. That term we hear so often. And as I buzzed the buzzer, there was a lady who sat on the desk, and she looked through the window, and to see how I was received when I was dressed like that, considering I speak with CEOs and executives every day of the week, was totally different than if I would have been dressed in my suit, had my smart shoes on, not had a cap on. And perceptions, people will always make perceptions of you. And I speak to the young people in schools today, and I say, what's your perception of me when I walked in the room before I spoke? And I say, oh, you look like a businessman. And I said, well, what if I came in with some 110s, a baseball cap and a Nike hoodie? Would you think the same? And I say, no. So people will always make perceptions. Now, that's not me saying, well, in that case, we should always have to dress smart to put on an image. But if we value our worth, then we will start to encompass that through every element of our daily life. And I think for me, myself now, I've realized part of my branding is me. Yes, we put out material, but I am my own branding as well. So therefore, I'm much more conscious of myself. I'm much more conscious of how I speak with people every day now. My language and my slang might be totally different to when I'm talking to my friends, to when I'm in a professional meeting. I'm totally different, but that all comes over time. But I'm starting to learn now that as Black educators within schools, having these healthy discussions amongst us as a team, collectively, we can start creating new avenues and sharing good practice. And that's what I'm all about. So I'm really happy to be part of the talk today, and happy to link with anybody else in the chat as well, and have further discussions on anything I've mentioned that you might want further elaboration on. And yeah, thank you very much for having me part of this. I really appreciate it.
Anthony, thank you for sharing. You dropped some. Those have been our first 3 speakers, some powerful stuff. And like I said, you know, all from various perspectives, all from different perspectives, all touching on different points. I did mention a break in the schedule. Like I said, depending on time, I don't think we will have that break. I think we'll just continue, and I'll invite our keynote speaker to share in a second. One thing I did wanted to share with you guys during the week, as I was planning and getting ready for this event, I stumbled across this, and it was it encompassed my views on branding, and identity, and knowing your tribe. So I'll just read this. It says, there is nothing more profound than the bond of a tribe, right? So there's nothing more profound than the bond of a tribe. You should never stop seeking out like-minded people. We weren't made to do this alone. The wins, the losses, the triumphs, the struggles, they're all meant to be shared. Whether you are new to teaching, or you're an experienced teacher, it's refreshing to hear the perspectives of others. Discovering your identity and knowing who you are in education and in society is important for everyone. All right, so just the idea, that it is a profound thing to the bond of a tribe is, and the bond of a collective of like-minded people is a powerful thing, and you should never stop seeking out those like-minded individuals in sort of environments like this. And it's a powerful thing that we're all able to come together and hear the various tips, advice, gems from our Black men. I done a tweet earlier. When's the last time we saw a lineup like this of 4 Black men sharing with us and their experiences, their journeys, and how they built their brand? But without me speaking too much, I'm going to invite across the action hero teacher. Now, when I at first I didn't even remember his name. Right? I forgot his name, even though I know it. Like I said it earlier, action hero teacher is how it's like. If I see him in person, I've never met him face to face, but I think that's the first thing I'll say. You're an action hero, like that's the brand he's built from himself. And this is a key one, especially for educators, because it links to the education. As a teacher, sometimes as a Black man in education, sometimes you can find yourself lost and not sure what direction, what path you want to go to. So building your brand within education is just as crucial as building it outside as a Black man in society, or a person. We've got females in here as well. So it's about building your brand. So thank you, Karl. There's so many different achievements to sort of share, and you've done so much. Award-winning author, FRSA, that I had to do my Google search, the esteemed sort of fellowship and your other notable achievements. So thank you for being here with us. I said I was gassed when you said yes, and you're able to be our keynote for today. But I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to stop sharing so that you can share your screen, and I'm going to leave you to it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Albert. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Eli, my guy, just to give you some background, me and Eli, we work in the same school. And me and Eli, we've known each other for several years. And he's been saying stories about me all morning. I'm going to say a story about him now. I remember during Black Lives Matter, we were going backwards and forwards, and Eli said to me, he's like, you know what, man, I've got a bit of an idea, bro. I said, oh, what idea have you got? And he goes, yeah, it's a bit top secret. He didn't want to tell me at first, right? It's like, it's top secret, man, I can't tell you. But then after I was like, can't tell me. And he goes, yeah, I want to do like a food program where, I get people and I talk about their lives and stuff like that. And I remember saying to him, because I said, how do you feel? And he goes, you know what? I don't care. If it doesn't work, I don't care. I don't care if it doesn't work. At least I know in myself I've tried. There's more to life than this. So I found it ironic that me and Eli are speaking on the same platform. And I said, look how far we've both come. Look how far we've both come. So I just want to say, you know what? Yeah, you should be scared, Eli. Now, I'm very proud of you, my brother. And when I see the fantastic things he's doing and the fruit, it goes to show, you've got to have that belief and faith. But anyway, that's not the speech. That's not the talk. That's not the talk. So I'm going to just share my screen briefly, guys. I prepared some slides for your delectable entertainment, ladies and gentlemen, today. So I'm just going to talk about some things here. I'm not some expert. And thank you for the FRSA. So I'm a fellow of the Royal Society of the Arts, Manufacture and Commerce. I'm just bougie. That's the only bougie part I'm going to do today, all right? I'm just Karl, all right? That's the only bougie part. So let's play for the start. Can everybody see my slides? I'm going into teacher mode now. So, yeah, so no interruptions, no playing around, Albert. Young Albert, stop playing around. So, how much time have I got? Not a lot of time. So let's talk about it. It's Abounding and Building a Tribe. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So what am I going to talk about in this webinar? So these are the learning objectives, ladies and gentlemen. There's 3 parts I want to talk about. The first one is, number 1, your story. Your story is your brand. You need to learn to be yourself. And I'm going to talk about that. Don't fake it till you make it. Be yourself. All right. even on the Tinder, no Tinder swindlers here. Just be yourself, okay? So I'm having fun. It's a Saturday. Why you must develop a skill stack and what Ryan Reynolds can teach you about having a great career. So it's almost like what I've done, just to explain, give some context, is reverse engineered how I got to where I got to. And it's completely by accident, by the way. I didn't go to Harvard or Oxford or anything like that, but I just kind of reverse engineered my journey, and hopefully it'll give you some tips and tricks. So I'm going to explain what a skill stack is. And the last thing is the power of weak ties and why you need weak ties. So your weak ties are people that are on your social media, people that you don't know very well, and why they're the key to your next big moves, whether it's in your career or in your life. And for me, Twitter has been just a blessing in regards to all the different things. But I hope you're ready. So let's just talk about it. So number one, your brand is your story. So I want to introduce you to this little chap. Here's me. You can tell what era, everyone's laughing, but you can tell what era I was born in. This was the 90s. You know, the high top was in fashion. New Jack Swing. Anybody know those films? Or am I talking? I'm showing my age here. New Jack Swing. You know, Wesley Snipes was about. You know, these were the times there. Denzel was still young. So this was me, young black boy, and I was raised in this town here called Barking, East London. Now, I've got an interesting fact about Barking. Barking is the only town, to my knowledge, that's been voted the worst place to live in the UK twice in a row. That is an achievement in of itself. You're laughing, but this is very, very true. They look at all the crime metrics, guns, the drugs and everything, and it won this prestigious award twice in a row. They did it like Barcelona or Real Madrid. You know, when they get the Champions League, that's what they did. So clearly it wasn't a nice place to live. I was raised on the edge of a place called the Gascoigne Estate. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it. The Gascoigne Estate was a notorious estate. In fact, it was so dangerous that the police basically knew, as young people, if we wanted to run away from the police or get away from the police, you run in the estate, because they'll never go in without like the bully bus, without like the van, because it was mad. It was absolutely crazy. But, you know, bless my parents, you know, they're African immigrants. They come, they said, you know, UK is very good, you know, and they didn't realize Barking was very bad. So that's the area I was raised in. I was raised with, you know, my friends were drug dealers. And, you know, there's always that friend that's always on arms. You know, I don't know about you, maybe you guys are civilized, but there's always that friend you just say, look, I'm in beef. Where is it? What time? I'm coming. That was my experience of life. That was my friendship. So I didn't come from a place with a silver spoon. So when I was 15 years old or 16 years old, so here's my story. If you ask me, Karl, what do you want to be when you grow older? I would have said this to you. I wanted to be a rapper. That was my dream. I wanted to be a rapper. I wanted to be a musician. This was the era when Jay-Z, Young Hove, State Property, these were the type of guys I was looking at, and I said, that was my dream. This is what I want to do. But in reality, it was more like this. I don't know. And put it in the comments if you know who these guys are. Put it in the comments. I don't know. Maybe I'm showing my age again. But these were the Soulquarians. We're looking at like the likes of Jay Dilla, R.I.P., Bilal, D'Angelo. I was more on that vibe. I was more on the nice vibe. I wasn't talking about stabbing and killing, although I was a Barking resident. That wasn't really my vibe. I was more on the peaceful vibe. So that was my dream. I had that in my heart. That was what I was pursuing my whole life. And my music was my passion, as I just said, to the despair of my African parents. Telling your parents you want to be a rapper or a musician. Maybe it's fashionable now, but in that time it wasn't. It was just, you're wasting your life every day. When I was just writing my lyrics, I was just in my bedroom listening to tunes. I was so determined, boy. And I would be writing, you know, spend hours and hours writing rhymes. I was making beats. I threw it away when I moved house recently. No, well, not recently, 2 years ago. I had a fat folder full of lyrics and books, and that was everything to me. So I was convinced I'll be the next Kanye West. This is old Kanye, not new Kanye. I'm not really feeling new Kanye, but old Kanye, definitely. And yeah, that was my dream. That's what I wanted to be. That's who I wanted to be. But for reasons too long to explain, I never made it, clearly. I think I was ahead of my time. I think I was just way ahead of my time. That's what. And so I went to uni. I did. So my mum was very pleased at that point. You're going to uni. You'll be a good boy. I said, okay, thank you. I got a degree, and for a long time, I drifted into different jobs. I didn't know. I didn't have a purpose. I didn't know what I was doing or how I was doing things. I was lost. To be honest, I was lost for a very long time in my life. And as a rough estimate, I did about 20 jobs. I'd counted the amount of jobs I did in my career. I did about 20 jobs. Some of those jobs included being in a call center. I don't know if any of you have had the experience of working in a call center. It's not fun. So when your phone line goes down and you want to move services, I was the guy you'll ring. I was getting constant abuse. You know them ones, innit? I'm leaving. It's like, sorry, sir. No, just don't say sorry. Get your manager. I was the guy you'll be abusing on the phone. I was a charity mugger, believe it or not. So you know those people that stop you in the street and try to, you know, save a child or whatever, like Amnesty International. That was me. I did all manner of things, promotions, sales. I cleaned banks, fresh out of uni. I said my tutors lied to me. I said, you know, they said that I'll be fighting jobs off, you know, by the time I leave uni, but none of that came true. So I was drifting for a very long time. And eventually, so the last job prior to that, I worked in sales. But again, with sales, I really wasn't really feeling it. So then I became a youth worker. Because of my experience in music and all those things, I became a youth worker and I worked my way up. So from my youth work, my career started to blossom. So really quickly for time, because time's running out, I became a teaching assistant, a mentor, and I provided one-to-one support for children with severe educational needs, SEMH. Then I became a fully qualified teacher, and then I became a NEETs coordinator. So I'm sure you guys are familiar, just for time. A NEET is not an employment, education, or training. And these are the guys that basically got kicked out of schools and they got excluded. So they got put in alternative provision. And my job and my team's job was to try and get them in some form of education or training. Otherwise, they'll end up in some form of gangs or some form of badness that we don't want, okay? Top Boy. And that's why, you know, Top Boy is coming back in March. Every time it comes, the kids just get a bit crazy, but it's like, that's what I was trying to stop. I was working in a place called the Isle of Dogs, which is near Canary Wharf. And this was the time of postcode wars and acid attacks. So, you know, for time, I could tell you many stories about that, but it was really hard going, but we knew we were changing lives. I helped to run an inner city school, London schools behavior department, and I'm doing it again. And I got a certificate in leadership and management and all that type of stuff. But the turning point was in 2019, where my teaching colleagues would say, you know, Karl, you're so good with these kids. Like, what do you do? And I was getting frustrated. I was like, oh, why are you always asking me? So I thought, let me put this in a book. So I took a big risk and I thought, you know what? I've learned so much over my different careers. Let me put this in a book. And so in 2019, I wrote my first book called The Action Era Teacher. There you go. And again, it was a shot in the dark. I wasn't on social media. I didn't do anything. No, I didn't even have a launch. I had a launch on WhatsApp. You know, them ones you put it in the family groups and, you know, you get your auntie to retweet it. That was my launch. I had zero social media presence. I didn't do anything. It was a shot in the dark. I just threw it up on Amazon. And in fact, in the first year, I only sold about 15 copies of it. You know them ones where you're getting aunties to twist your arms and stuff like that. So it wasn't a big success. And then I wrote a blog, but I'll go into it in a minute. So it was a slow start. And then I started my blog during lockdown called actionerateacher.com. And that's when things started to change. And obviously George Floyd happened. And again, for time, I wish I had more time. I'll tell you all the twists and turns. And then actionerateacher.com blew up. And then last year in September 2021, one of the proudest moments of my life, I was inducted to become a fellow in the Royal Society of the Arts, Commerce and Manufacture, known as the RSA. When they sent me the email, I thought it was one of them, you know, phishing, where they say, you know, send me your details. And then, you know, we'll give you this award or something. It's them phishing. I said, nah, this ain't real. But so I rung the number and I was like, I'm sure somebody's, you know, taking my details. Like, no, we are from the Royal Society of the Arts, Commerce and Manufacture. And basically it's the country and in fact the world's 30,000 most best speakers, innovators, change makers. And they said, we want you, because of the work that you've done with AHT, we want to make you a fellow. People like Stephen Hawking was inducted in there. People like, you know, Karl Marx, Charles Dickens were inductees, Dame Judi Dench. So it was a huge honor. Okay. Now, why is all this relevant? So my religious uncle would always say this scripture. Why did I start with this story? And we know that all things God works for and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him and have been called according to his purpose. What does that mean? So what I realized is that my strange winding career actually gave me incredible advantages that I would have never foreseen and made me valuable to the marketplace. So every single job that I worked, whether it was cleaning a bank, whether it was working with youth, whether it was telephone sales, whether it was rapping or making music, all these things congealed. They gave me little bits of skills which were like Legos, and I put them together to create something very unique. So part of branding or to build a brand is learning to be yourself. Your uniqueness is your superpower. The temptation to assimilate as you ascend, there's a temptation to assimilate as you ascend higher in your career. Don't. Your background, your culture, your skill sets gives you access to places where other people cannot go. And especially as Black educators and Black people, stop. One thing that annoys me is when people say, oh, being Black is a disadvantage. No, it's your superpower. And I got that from Oswald Boateng, who's the famous fashion designer. And he said, aren't you nervous? Because when he was, he's the first ever, he was the first ever Black head of a fashion house. And this was before Virgil Abloh, may his soul rest in peace. And he said, aren't you scared or at a disadvantage? You know, when you go into these meetings, you're the only Black person in the room. He goes, no, that's my superpower, because it makes everybody put their eyes on me. And that's how I want you guys to see your lives. It's not about being Black. Everything you've done, there's no failures in your life. This is your superpower, okay? None of the skills, talents, and experiences you have had are wasted. In our chaotic world, we need leaders that can not only think outside the box, but that can think outside the whole room. Trust your instincts, okay? The older generation have messed everything up, as we can clearly see. So it's up to us with our fresh ideas and the things that we do to go forward. I know time is going, so I'll continue. Branding, build yourself a talent stack. So now you know yourself, you know your skills. What is a talent stack? So here's some interesting statistics about our future job market. And this is very important to understand. We're no longer in the industrial age. We're in the information age now. So as much as 30% of jobs will be replaced by automation, especially boring and repetitive ones. This is by 2030. 1.5 million people in England are at risk of losing their jobs to automation, according to the Office of National Statistics. We're at risk of losing 375 million jobs worldwide by 2030. So again, there was a report by the Bank of England by a guy called Mark Carney, who used to be the former head of the Bank of England, and their job is to forecast and look at the future and say, what would the world look like in 2030? And it was quite startling. With all the automation and all the things that we're seeing in the world, because of the internet, there are a lot of jobs that are now being taken over by machines. In fact, they're saying by 2050, half the world's population will not have a job. And this is round the corner, guys. We're in 2022. It's not a long way away. So the World Economic Forum says machines will create 58 million new jobs. Millennials and Gen Z expect to have 12 job changes in a lifetime, all right? So we are educating students for jobs that don't exist yet, okay? Near where I live, there's an Amazon Fresh where you walk in the shop, you don't even have to have a shopkeeper to assist you. You pick up your stuff, it does some facial recognition obviously on your face, and you walk out of the shop with your stuff. So what does that mean for retail? If you look at places like John Lewis, if you look at other places, the future is here. It's not somewhere far in the future. It's somewhere far in the distance. So in our chaotic world, leaders and people in general will have to absorb, decipher, and act on more decisions than ever. And in these situations, generalists will do better than specialists. So what I'm saying is, yes, our school system teaches us to specialize, but you need to have more skills more than ever. Now, I am aware of time. So I just want to point you to a book you should read by Daniel Epstein. It's called Range, How Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. It's brilliant. I read it at the top of 2020, and it's brilliant. And basically, what he was saying was, our old world, there's kind environments and there are wicked environments, okay? So our world rewards specialism. People master a particular craft, okay? So the people in these images are specialists. Tiger Woods, Ronaldo, they're the top 0.1% in the fields. Hence, to market economics, they've received the lion's share of the rewards. Now, this works in a stable environment where most things are known and most things are not unpredictable. In tennis, no one's going to come with a rocket launcher or do a kung fu kick. You know the rules, it's fixed. But what we are leaning on, that's a kind environment. What we are going into, especially now, we're going into a wicked environment. So a kind environment, patterns repeat, feedback is accurate and rapid, rules of the game are well defined. So things like chess and golf, they will never change the rules. But in a wicked learning environment, patterns are not obvious. Patterns don't repeat. Feedback is delayed. Rules are unclear. So problem solving, world hunger, large organizational transformations. And more, we are leaning into wicked environments with everything that's happening with COVID, geopolitical relations, internet. We are now more in a wicked environment. So as I've just said, for time, the 40-40 plan, working 40 hours a week for 40 years in the same field, is obsolete. This is becoming our reality. And this is the same for the students you teach in yourself. They expect that people that are millennials, part of my generation, will have up to 12 job changes in a lifetime, whereas maybe your grandfather in the 60s will have 2 job changes. So you have to constantly be flexible and adaptable to the many changes that we face in a society and teach these skills to your students and yourself. So the key takeaway is, do not let your past experience go to waste. Your hobbies, your talents, your skills can be the key to unlocking some areas you never thought you can reach. For example, the AHT book. If you've read the book, by the way, that's a quick plug. Sorry, Albert. If you've read the book, I have got everything in there. I've learned things from sales, from psychology, from music, and I literally put it like some stew, and I threw everything in there. And that's what created AHT, the brand, because I've through all my experiences. So nothing goes to waste. Encourage experimentation with yourself and others. So Google had like the 20% project where they said from Monday to Thursday, you do Google projects for us, but on Friday, you can do whatever you want. All right. Where they let their employees spend 20% of their allocated time. Try in your free time to experiment, do things that you don't normally do. Okay. So for example, I started chess, something I never thought I would ever play in my life. And I started last year and I love it now. So that's my form of experimentation. And change failure into feedback. Don't be too harsh on yourself when you're experimenting. Every mistake will teach you a lesson. Learn from it and move on. As this Food Bangz said, this Food Bangz was saying, I learned from every single video I made. So sometimes the camera, and I love what he said because I've seen his journey. From the start, his first video to his most recent video is completely changed. So he's constantly learning, and that's what we've got to do. Sorry, I'm going to 2 minutes and I'll be done. So I'm just going to move on. Really, and I'm going to skip some parts because I don't want to eat up too much of your time. So basically, what you want to do is build a talent stack. And this was coined by a guy called Scott Adams, who wrote Dilbert. And he said, in a competitive field, it's virtually impossible to be the top 1% in your field. But with a little effort, you can be the top 25% in a couple of fields that can lead you to the same success. So he was basically saying, so I'll give you an example, Ryan Reynolds. So Ryan Reynolds is a decent actor, but he's not an Oscar winner, right? He's funny, but he's not a sellout stand-up comedian. He's a good businessman, but he's not Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk. But you can argue he's in the top 25% of each of his fields. In the top 25% of actors, top 25% of funny people, top 25% of business people, okay? He's not the best in any of them. But what he has done is blended them successfully to become an A-list movie star and a successful businessman, okay? And that is what you want to do. You don't have to be the best, but learn to combine different skills. So do a skills inventory. Look at the skills that you currently have and see if you can combine them together in new and interesting ways. Here's mine from my former music career, rapping. I converted that into writing skills and the impressive use of language devices, metaphors, similes. I know how to do that. Performing, presentation skills, what I'm doing now. I used to go on stages, do battle rap, so it took away the fear of talking publicly. Selling mixtape, basic business skills and negotiation. Making beats, technical computer skills and knowledge of youth culture. This came from my rapping career. And look what it's done. It's now my rap career has helped me be in front of you right now. And all these skills help me to create Action Hero Teacher. Okay? Last part, guys. Become a T-shaped learner. So make sure you specialize. So if you're a teacher, you know, you've got your skill as a maths teacher or an entrepreneur, but try and complement it with other skills. So remember, innovation is two old ideas meeting for the first time. Yeah, that is all innovation is. Two old ideas meeting for the first time. Uber, an app plus taxi. You get the idea. So go deep with your specialism, but have a strong base of technical skills. Now you can find your tribe. I promise I'll be done in 3 minutes. So I'm all right, guys. I'm all right for time, or how are people feeling?
Yeah, go for it. So
3 minutes.
I mean, you go up.
Sorry, I went over.
Up into 12. So yes, we'll close at 12.
No problem. So why is this important? So the power of weak ties, super quickly. So this comes from a research study in 1973 by a guy called Mark Granovetter, and he invented this title. And he basically said, he did research and he said the premise is simple. So your social world contains two types of people. You've got strong ties, which represent people that you know intimately and you see regularly, and you've got weak ties that represent acquaintances and people that you may not be so in close contact with. And what he found really quickly, he did a survey of up to 300 Boston-based workers. He said only a minority of people got their jobs through a close friend. 84% of them got their job through weak tie relationships, meaning casual contacts. So Granovetter pointed out people that we spend a lot of time with swim in the same pool of information you do, but we need outsiders because they'll introduce us to new places. So really quickly, so if, for example, I'll skip that part. So for new information and ideas, weak ties are more important to us than strong ties. And this is where social media comes in. It makes it easier to make connections literally around the world with people that you don't associate with. So, for example, me and Albert have never met physically, you know, but we come together through social media. So I would say you're a weak tie. You're a strong weak tie, sir. If I say that, I'm not saying weak as in, I'm sure you're very strong, but he's from a different area, different set of friends, different community to me. And that's how we got together. And that's how this event got together. So last thing, and I promise I'll finish there. So when it comes to your tribe, use your social media is your tribe, but stop trying to sell to them. When I first come on Twitter, as Thingy said, as what Eli said, he was like, oh, I kept on selling my book. Nobody cared. But when I started saying, look, let me try and help people, that is when I started to build the tribe. Start helping people. If they've got questions and you've got answers to them, answer those questions. Share things. Go out of your way to help people. And trust me, that's how I got 10,000 followers. And then once you serve your tribe will serve you. And where you can, try and meet in real life. I will stop there. And as I said, I had a little tribute there, but we have run out of time. Jamal Edwards, I think, was the creme de la creme. He was the level 9 student in everything that I've just said. So we just need to use him as an example. I'll finish there. I hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry.
We'll leave that slide up. So there's Action Hero Theatre's social media sort of information. Do connect with him. Powerful speaker. And you know, the 3 points that he mentioned, you know, knowing yourself, building your stack of experience, your stack of skills, and then also what was the final one? Weak ties. You know, your network. They may not be your closest people. They may not be your best friends, but having a network that you support, and in turn they will support you. But thank you, Action Hero Teacher. Thank you, Karl. And thank you. You know, this is your bougie moment. You know, we'll give it.
FRSA.
No,
thank you,
guys. It's been a pleasure. So, you know, you've heard from our 4 speakers. I think some powerful things have been said. You know, there's been various comments. We've had these, you know, here's, before we do that, what I'll do, are there any other questions? So there's, you know, I know it's, what time is it? Almost 12 o'clock, but I'm sure we've got time if people are happy to stay just for final questions. Anything that people have to ask or say. If there's not, then that's perfect. We'll move on. But any final questions that people want to ask, now's your chance to do so. You can either wave your hand, raise your hand, or comment in the chat. I'll leave that for about a minute. But whilst you're thinking of potential questions, I'll share this. So our upcoming events, we've had 2 sort of formal events so far that have been that have gone very well. So we've got this one, branding, knowing your tribe, but knowing your identity, how you can build your sort of personal brand, whether it's in education, outside of education. Black males around the table, we've had that. Our next event is linking the stages of all linking the stage of education. They all matter, right? So each and every stage of education, whether it's early years, primary school, secondary, higher education, all of the stages, they matter. So that's the next event. We have an event at the end of every month. So the last Saturday of every month, we have an event. So that's what's coming up. Do follow us on social media. It's at BlackMenTCH. So at BlackMenTCH. Clive, will come to you for your question or your comments. You're on mute at the moment. There we go.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
I wanted to get a response from primarily David, but Karl and David, if they're still on the platform, just their opinion on Saturday schools for all Black children from primary school through secondary. What's their opinion on that? Sending all Black children to Saturday schools.
Good question. I think we'll give each speaker. So David is still here, Karl is still there. So give them sort of a minute just to share thoughts, comments on that. Do you want to go for it, David?
Yeah, no worries. So there was a book written by Malcolm Gladwell, and it was called David and Goliath, and he's a sort of like a social theory teacher, basically studies society. And so what he was doing, he went to America, into the sort of like the bad part of New York, a lot of deprivation, stuff like that. Very, very poor kids. But these schools were for ethnic sort of Black, Hispanic kids who had, financially struggling. So in these schools would start about sort of like 7 in the morning, end at 5 in the evening. And the kids who came out of this school, it was hard. It was toilsome. It was proper, like deep, heavyweight stuff. But these kids excelled, and they ended up going Harvard. They ended up going to all the Ivy League schools, because, how you might say, the additional help, the additional time, the additional doing, which is, as I say, par excellence, you're exceeding the status quo, actually did help. And so the Saturday schools, I think they are a great idea. In other words, you're exceeding the monotony or what the average person does. It will bear fruit. So for me, whoever does that or what people are into doing that, I do support it, and I do see the practical fruit of it.
Thank you, David. Karl, you got comments?
Yes, absolutely. Bring them back. The reason being is that there's an understanding. If you look at our peers, there's Sikh schools, there's Muslim schools, there's Jewish schools, there's Chinese schools. So there's an understanding, and because I don't want to make it all black, whatnot, but there's an understanding from our peers that it's important that their children get educated in particular tenets of their particular culture, right? There's an understanding. That's why, you'll have parents sending their kids to supplementary schools. And I think for us, we are trying to, Malcolm X once said, only a fool let his enemies teach his children. Now, obviously, it could sound harsh, but what I'm saying, what I interpret that as, is that we are going through a system which is not being built for us. It's not to say they're against us, but it's not being built for us. So we need to supplement our children's education to make sure that we can build something better. And I think that's important, because if we're relying on the system to help us, it's not going to do that. So we need to supplement it. That's all I've got to say.
Yeah, and I think that answers your question, Clive. Yes, they are necessary. Yes, they have an impact, and the outcomes can be amazing. And we speak about excellence. If you want any plugs to sort of supplementary schools that are around, the one I am aware of is More Education. I think it's an online supplementary school, black male led, and I don't know if Akeem is in here. I know Akeem may be involved in one down in Manchester. But yeah, so there are supplementary schools around if you wanted us to connect you with them. And then we've got Eli, who's raised his hand. We'll finish with Eli.
Yeah, thanks. Karl, I saw your stats about the 30% of jobs are at risk or something.
Yeah.
Because we're moving into the information age. It's quite scary. Those stats are very scary. I was just saying, like, are the students that we're teaching now, are they in trouble? And is the content we're teaching relevant to what they're going to be facing in the next 10 to 20 years?
Absolutely. That's a very, very good question. Now, how can I answer that question? The thing is, we're teaching 21st century kids in 18th century classrooms. If you look at when education started, really mainstream education started in the late 19th century, early 20th century, under the Children's Act, 1896, I believe. If I got a time machine and I went back and I got a teacher from that time and said, I want to take you to 2022 and put you in a classroom, apart from the whiteboard and the projectors, he would know exactly what context he's in. Yeah, it has not changed. And that was for a different age. That was for the industrial age, where the 40-40 plan, 40 hours a year, in 40 years in one job would work. We are in a completely different era. So to answer that first part of your question, you're right. We can't afford to do that anymore. It's obsolete. Education needs to be reformed. But are they in trouble? The second part I'll end it with this. JFK once said, if you look at the Chinese symbol for danger, there's two parts. One is the danger, or the trouble, and the second part of the symbol is opportunity. So for some, it will be a great opportunity. So you've got the KSIs, you've got the Jamal Edwards, who have taken advantage of what is coming, and they became very successful. But as a whole, and I think our kids know that. Our kids know that, and they're doing that. They're doing their own side hustles. They're doing their own projects, because the internet has basically democratized the means of production. But as a whole, the mainstream education system, if we just rely on that, it's not going to take us anywhere far. So I think there is peril, but there are opportunities as well.
Okay, and hopefully that answers you. Hopefully that answered your question, Eli. And guys, that's a wrap. Thank you for coming to join us here today with Black Men Teaches, second event, branding, knowing your tribe. I know it's definitely been insightful for myself. What we will be doing is we'll be putting the clips together and sharing it on YouTube for anyone that wanted to watch it back, for anyone that missed some of the earlier talks or earlier presentations. So I will be chopping it up and putting it on YouTube. I'll share it via our social medias. The last thing that's here on the screen is we are building a sort of a community on Slack that gets sort of more regular updates, or we share things with directly in terms of events, our community hub, and sort of things that we would like to do for the Black community and Black men in our society and education. So do scan the QR code and join our community that we're building. We're growing here. Khalil in the chat mentioned, how many different subjects are covered here with us as Black male educators in the room, and there is a large span of subjects. I know we've got maths, we've got science, we've got PE, we've got citizenship, we've got RE, so loads. And you never know, a couple of years down the line, Black Men Teach may have its own supplementary school. We've got to speak it into existence, right? So guys, thank you for joining us here today. It's been powerful. I hope you've enjoyed it and been able to take something away. Go ahead, enjoy the rest of your weekends, enjoy your Saturdays. And that's a wrap. That's all from us here and the Black Men Teach team. One last shout out to all of our speakers. So thank you, Karl, for joining us. Thank you, Eli. Thank you, David. And thank you, Anthony. It's been a pleasure, and it's been great to hear parts of your journeys. I know we could talk forever on some parts, but it's been great to have a little insight on your journeys and your tips around branding, identity, and sort of knowing your tribe and finding your tribe. But thank you, guys. Feel free to leave. Enjoy the rest of your weekends. Take care.